Alright everyone, we start off today talking about a little bit more poll analysis. We've got to talk about Biden's approval actually again because he got no bounce from the infrastructure deal being struck. My initial thought was he probably gets a little bit of a bump, maybe a couple of points, not enough to bring him nearly above water. But there are Dem partisans that was a big thing for them, at least it was maybe nearly a year ago. Well, infrastructure in the country. And of course the Build Back Better agenda severed from that, which has trillions more in pork barrel spending. That looks like it might be DOA at this time in the Senate. Manchin has not opened up the idea of undoing the filibuster for a standalone bill, which means you need Republicans aboard. While you had some cave and vote for it, vote for the smaller bill that was parsed off of it, I don't think that there are any that support the Build Back Better horseshit, mainly because it's just a bunch of additional pork barrel spending. I mean, it's not even earmarked as infrastructure. It's earmarked as green jobs and all, basically shovel-ready 2.0. It's a massive power grab by the federal government, and there's a massive multi-trillion-dollar windfall to different people in Congress for their different districts and states, which is what we used to call pork barrel spending. It's meaningless. It's not thrifty. It's a waste of time. There's no return on investment. If you're lucky, you nearly break even. Beijing Biden, as a result of this, though, again, I had considered the likelihood that he gets a little bit of a bounce from the infrastructure deal passing. Much to his chagrin, that has not happened. It slipped further. It was approaching 10-point gap between disapproval and approval being the lower number. Now it's 10.7. His approval is now cratered to the point where it's at risk to being in the 30s. And this is in the first year of his presidency. Again, the difference with Trump, who also had low approval by this time, is that Trump was facing a 24/7 bombardment by the legacy media and big tech. This is something that Biden has the opposite situation. All of these groups, by and large, refuse to criticize him. If they do criticize him, it's half-assed. You see them making excuses for 6.4% inflation right now. This is bad for the Democrats at large, too, when you look at the congressional ballot voting likelihood, where the Republicans have now pulled out ahead of the Democrats. And in some polling firms, it's like a 40-year high for their potential generic congressional ballot vote share. If they end up getting more votes than the Democrats, this means either massively higher Republican turnout, massively lower Democrat turnout, or some combination of both, which is more likely. And they would get absolutely ass-blasted in the midterms. They would barely survive as a party if it were a 10-point gap. Biden could feasibly be removed from office. You'd be flipping so many House and Senate seats. Now, first and foremost, keep in mind, if you're watching this video on YouTube, there will be a pinned comment down below with links to 4 other video hosting sites that I use. Keep in mind, I make several exclusive videos a day, and it will probably be 3 today because KDP is holding up one of my books, and I keep doing the back and forth over copyright in email. I know I'll prevail in the end, but sometimes it can take them days. And they've been a little bit more stringent about it, especially with regards to European web stores lately. I don't know exactly why. They've changed something about the way they do business. It's either much faster or much slower, and it really depends on the work. Anyway, here's your problem going into the midterms if you're the Democrats. The effect on the down-ballot races with Biden appears to be quite high. It wasn't like with Trump. There was some effect on down-ballot races, both positive and negative. That's still happening. Obviously, Youngkin being endorsed by him early and often didn't harm him any. He managed to win against McAuliffe, although part of that was indeed McAuliffe's own optics and messaging failing. Here's the problem. Looking forward to the next year, because the midterm basically begins in a month. Basically, as soon as the year flips over, it's the midterms. Everyone will be talking about it on a fucking daily basis. To the exclusion of other worthy news in some cases, like major trials get buried, foreign events get buried. I think you have to dig a little bit deeper to get extra analysis. Sometimes I even have to scrape the bottom of the barrel and go to CNN or some site like that just because it's not enough news to actually cover, and very, very discouraging and unfortunate and wastes my time, and it'd be nice if there was an even better, more up-to-date aggregator that had more independent media on it. But if you look at the next year, there's no reason to believe that the economy will get better. There's no reason to believe that they're actually going to solve the border crisis. The border czar still hasn't visited the border now 10 months on from being instituted in that role. Kamala Harris. She's a no-show. She's wise enough not to want to even appear with Biden generally. You've got a president who's demented. He's clearly out to lunch. And the polling has slipped more than I expected. I tend to be more, and pardon the use of the term, conservative when it comes to estimating how much loss or gain something will actually involve within politics. There are a lot of people now who are solidly locked into the hate Biden or will always support Biden partially due to partisan composition. Usually groups. There's the wiggle room is less. The wiggle room, I think, between the highs and the lows is becoming less over time, at least at the moment, because of the hyper-partisan political climate as well. If you have a lot of people over here and a lot of people over there that really viscerally dislike one another, it's gone beyond I disagree with you into the realm of you should be put in a gulag or you should be put in a camp or something. That's what our political discourse at times has devolved into. It would be difficult to imagine one of those people switching sides. If anything, this means that turnout plays a bigger role because you want to get your people out and you want the other people largely to stay home because you can't really eat into their vote share. Like the Democrats are not going to get some MAGA hat wearing populist to vote Democrat 99% of the time. The Republicans are not going to get some pink-haired doofus to vote Republican. It's just not going to happen. The independent vote takes outsized importance and then turnout. We've already seen the turnout differential. We saw this in Virginia. We saw it in New Jersey. Dems with a 7-8 point aggregate lead, which can't be explained just by the polling oversampled. It is New Jersey. It's a blue state after all, or at least by all accounts it has been a blue state. I don't know about that anymore. And then you end up winning by less than 2 points. In Virginia, you're expecting to win by a couple of points. In the 11th hour, things collapse. You lose by a couple of points. Some of this is turnout. The problem is that the Democrats have not abandoned any of the toxic issues that they've glommed onto. Critical race theory, still defending it. They're still defending the vax mandate. That is beginning to lose, I think, support in the United States. They're ignoring the shortages. They're ignoring the border crisis and continuing to call people bigots if they call these things problems. The problem is that, therefore, I can't imagine anything particularly changing over the next year. The only thing at this point I think that can stop a red wave in the midterms is the Republicans. They are known once in a while to not just filibuster, but filibuster their own party and strangulate themselves and snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. They've done this a number of times. But as I pointed out the other day with the ABC poll, showing the largest lead for Republicans in the generic ballot in 40 years, when those subsequent midterms the following year happened, the Republicans actually lost. That was 1982. This is because of a mini recession. But the shoe is on the other foot right now. Now you have the inflation, the recessionary conditions, low labor force participation, shortages, etc., and it's against the Democrats. They've got the White House. They also technically have the House and Senate, which means they get outsized blame. It would be historically normal for them to lose control probably of the House anyway, because that 7-seat difference is not so overwhelming after all. And that would be assuming that there was even turnout. In order for them to have even turnout, they need to be +5 on the congressional generic ballot, though, because as I've explained, there are more Democrats than Republicans registered in the country. So unless you have a big independent swing for the Democrats, and I don't think anyone takes seriously the idea that that'll happen, the fact that there was no infrastructure boost for Biden and that that's going to continue dragging down ballot for the next year, the fact that at least for the first half of the next year you have these people openly expecting to continue having shortages and inflationary problems, not even peaking possibly till February, that's going to be a lot of lost support. And I don't think that they can get most of it back. Again, unless you have something major that reunifies people, like some major foreign policy success. So the infrastructure deal actually has a return on investment. It won't. Trust me, federal projects almost never do. It'll be shovel-ready 2.0, but twice as expensive. What would I expect from here until this time next year to change in the course of the economy, diplomacy, etc., that would be positive for the Biden administration? Nothing. Therein lies the problem. They can throw more red meat to their base and pass build back bullshit. That's not going to win new votes. A handful of independents might like it, just as many, probably will say $4.2 trillion. Fuck, I'm going to vote for the Republicans, I guess, or stay home. I don't see any way they can boost turnout. The other problem, and this is really optics, this has nothing to do with policy, is that they don't really have a leader. Joe Biden is a steward. Kamala Harris is a no-show. You got Buttigieg, he's a no-show too. He's literally off the job. You've got a slew of Democrats saying different things with regards to different economic and diplomatic and interior problems and issues, and they don't really have a unified message either. Well, the Republican message has coalesced. NCRT, stop spending the funny money, and populism, tax relief, etc., anti-wokeness. Those are fairly unifying. There aren't many Republican holdouts. You got Liz Cheney, you got sometimes Mitt Romney. Nobody really talks to them or about them anymore. In the Democratic Party, you have 5 or 6 different polls forming. You got the Geek Squad, it used to be the Gang of Four. You get the progressives, so-called, within the House. Really, they want to take us back to the 1800s, but they call themselves that. So you got the progressive bloc. You got sort of the sleazy, will be progressive or neoliberal depending on the day bloc with like Elizabeth Warren. You get the dedicated neolibs, like the heavy hitter crowd, like Pelosi and Schumer. The Biden admin is almost severed from any other group at this point. I mean, if you don't have a message other than, hey, no mean tweets, which appears to be what it boils down to, and hey, let's spend some more money while we've got these shortages, I'm just not seeing it. At this point, I mean, the analysis is fairly easy looking at the trajectory of the polls. I know it's kind of low-hanging fruit, but I figured I would analyze it again today simply because I was astonished that there was no bounce. Not even among partisan Dems, apparently, was this rather large $1.4 trillion bill that did pass with some Republican support. Nobody even cares. I guess the economic side of things is dragging so much on Biden's approval and on the Dems in general that people are fixated on little else. By the way, correct prediction. The bigger bounce, I had a bigger loss in approval, wasn't due to Afghanistan, which was a big hit initially many months ago, but again, due to new economic news and the slow attrition over the course of several months due to shortages. And that's going to continue. So I think Beijing Biden, at some point, he might just say, well, in consultation with my priest and my doctor, I've decided to resign. By the way, if he resigns, he won't admit that it's because nobody likes him or because he's demented. He'll just say unspecified health issues. Well, I'm old, it's time to pass the torch. Kamala can be president for a while. She can run. I don't expect him to run in 2024, and if he tried, I think the Democrats would at least attempt to primary him. That's about all. Peace out.